So Ryan, while you're doing, I want to ask a question. Somebody ever asked a question.
Hmm.
Um, is the Florida Spring Institute another organization, right? Or is this the same as the Florida Springs Council?
The Fortune Institute is a different group. Bob Knight, who runs that, is actually one of the folks who founded the Florida Springs Council, but we're separate nonprofits, and they focus on more of the science issues, and we focus on the advocacy issues. And according to DEP, to, to have no positive impact on water quality. Um, So this is what the law actually said. This is the most important part of the law. And I've bolded and highlighted the elements that DEP failed to do that were the basis of our 4.5 year long challenge. First, they had to identify a list of all of the projects and programs necessary to implement the nutrient TMDL. And the nutrient total maximum daily load, all that is the water quality goal. So that is the water quality goal for clean springs set by the state. And to implement that goal simply means to achieve it. So what number one is really saying is you need a list of projects and programs that's going to achieve the water quality goal. Number seven says that they have to identify an estimated allocation of the pollutant load. That means they have to say how much each type of polluter, agriculture, septic systems, urban fertilizer, etc., how much each of those sectors is responsible for reducing pollution by. This is really the accountability section. This is the enforcement. If you don't have the goal for how much each of these polluters has to reduce, then there's no way to hold them accountable if they don't achieve the results that are required. And there's also no way to do water quality credit trading if they're able to achieve more than the results that are required. And finally, it clearly says that it has to have a plan designed to achieve the TMDL within 20 years of adoption. So this is really the most important things. These are the heart of what was in Senate Bill 552 that I and Sierra Club and many other groups worked on for 3 years. And although we weren't in love with the bill when it passed, these were some of the things that we thought could potentially make a difference. Unfortunately, when DEP adopted the BMAPs, they failed to include those things. They failed to include the most necessary things. And tellingly, when we did our discovery, we found out that in the early drafts of the BMAPs, they actually had a lot of the things that were required by law. And they removed those things ostensibly at the request of the regulated industries. Very significantly, they does not allocate the pollution load reductions to categories of sources. And this is something that DEP had done in other BMAPs throughout the state, but when it came to the Springs BMAPs, they all of a sudden decided it wasn't something they were required to do. And I think it's safe to say that the reason they didn't do it, and now that we're winning, we're seeing that the reductions to agriculture in the Santa Fe, Sewanee, and Chautauqua Rainbow are going to have to be astronomical. They're going to have to be 70, 80% reduction in nitrogen loading from agriculture, which means you're going to have widespread and significant changes in land use. And I don't think that's something that DEP or our elected officials or really anyone in the state is willing to talk about right now. So it's better to bury those figures and not put them out. Secondly, none of the BMAPs that we challenge contain sufficient projects and practices to achieve the water quality goals. In simple terms, what that means is that DEP was responsible to create a roadmap to get us from where we are today to clean water. And instead of getting us there, even in a plan, the plans they proposed only achieved 20, 25, 30, 40% of the reduction necessary. So they were designed to fail. Even if they were 100% successful, and even if you take DEP at their word with all of their ridiculous assumptions, the plans would still leave us with potentially dirtier water in the future than we have today. And one of the reasons this is true is because there were a lot of tools that DEP could have used to require reductions in pollution that they refused to use for political reasons, even though they had the ability to. Fourth, the BMAPs assumed there'd be no growth in the state of Florida over the next 20 years. So they assume that one new person will move into Florida, not one agricultural operation will expand. Of course, that's not true. And when you look at the BMAPs as a whole, I mean, they're complicated documents, anyone can make mistakes, but when all of the mistakes tend to lead in one direction, which is favoring polluters against the health of our springs, you have to begin to question whether it's, incompetence or really malfeasance that led to BMAPs that were so legal and inadequate.
Dory,
Yep. Was there a question?
sorry, I
Okay.
wasn't muted.
No worries. So the state has refused to produce any water quality data for any springs except Wacala, which is kind of their favorite thing to point to. But otherwise, they won't give us any water quality data on springs, despite the fact that they're legally required to do so each year. They just don't do it. So we did a public records request last year, and we said, we want all of your nitrate data for the outstanding Florida springs from when the BMAPs were adopted until it was pretty much the end of 2022. So we got that data. Someone asked earlier about the Florida Springs Institute. This kind of shows the relationship between FSC and FSI. You know, we did the public records request, and then we got the data and handed it over to FSI. And they were the ones who did the data analysis and ran the numbers and gave it back to us to do the public communications and advocacy with. And that's kind of how our groups work together. But FSI came up with these wonderful graphs for us. And what we see is that in spring after spring after spring, despite the fact that DEP is legally required to reduce nitrogen by 30% during the first 5 years of the BMAPs, we see spring water quality getting worse and worse all over the state. And if you look at all of them combined, this is what you see. So you see that where we were when the law was passed in 2016 is where that red line is, and that last dot is where we are today. So under the BMAPs adopted by DEP and championed by the legislature and Governor DeSantis, our springs have gotten objectively worse at the time when they're legally required to get better. And that's one of the reasons that we went to court. And what we found out in January of this year, after a 4.5-year legal battle, we actually won at the First District Court of Appeals. And the First District Court of Appeals overturned the BMAPs for the challenged outstanding Florida springs, including the Sewanee BMAP that Sierra Club challenged. And they told DEP they had to rewrite the BMAPs to include allocations of the pollutant load and to address future loading. This isn't in the presentation because we just got it today. But we actually got DEP's proposed draft final order, how they plan to implement our victory. And you probably won't be surprised to know that they are trying to do as little as possible and to really ignore the spirit of the law and the spirit of the ruling at First DCA. So I'm going to meet with our attorneys tomorrow, and we're going to strategize on what our next steps are, and then I'll be meeting with the executive committee over at Sierra to discuss our options. This is a 4.5-year case, and while it's amazing that we won, and I'm so proud of the victory, and I think it's one of the things that really will lead to our springs having a chance to be restored. It's absolutely ridiculous that FSC and Sierra Club and Rainbow River Conservation and all of these groups have had to spend now close to 5 years fighting the Department of Environmental Protection in court just to make plans that adhere to the law, right? This isn't denying a permit. This isn't telling someone they can't build something. It's just to make a plan for clean water. And our state agencies are, I think, so broken and so captured at this point, particularly the districts and DEP, that they're not even able to create a credible plan politically without having local citizens spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and half a decade in court to force them to do it. And unfortunately, we continue to see that attitude over and over again, whether it's the BMAPs, whether it's adopting rules to prevent water withdrawals that are harmful, whether it's consumptive use permitting, development decisions. We're constantly fighting the state agencies that we should be able to rely on to serve us. And it's kind of crazy when you're in court and the entire other side's attorneys are being paid by your tax dollars to represent some of the wealthiest industry groups in the state. Another legal issue that we've been going on that you all are probably familiar with is our challenge of the Nestle Seven Springs permit up in the Santa Fe area. This has gotten a lot of national attention. A lot of folks wonder why we chose this permit. It's only 1 million gallons a day, which is a relatively small percentage of the pumping in that area. But we had some good reasons. And one of the reasons is that under the proposal, they're going to triple pumping. And they're tripling that pumping from the Santa Fe River. And the Santa Fe River is one of the few spring-fed rivers in Florida that is currently in violation of its minimum flow and level. That means that according to law, significant harm is already occurring because of over withdrawals from that river. So to allow a foreign company to come in and triple pumping at a time when the district is proposing insane plans. There's a plan right now in this district to pump 500 million gallons of water from the Suwannee River every day, build a wastewater treatment plant in the middle of the woods in the Ichetucknee, and then have that water essentially recharge the aquifer over by the Ichetucknee. But the water is so dirty that they have to run it through a wastewater treatment plant first. They would rather do that than just deny a consumptive use permit to a company like Nestle. So we challenged it, one, because the permit's clearly not in the public interest as expressed by the nearly 20,000 comments in opposition to the permit, many of them from Sierra Club members. And also because the bottler, formerly Nestle, now known as Blue Triton, was not on the permit, which was required by law. So as you'd expect, the attorneys for Nestle and Seven Springs have done everything they can to keep us from having our day in court. It took us 2.5 years just to get to a court hearing, which we had on May 10th in Tallahassee. We had to go through an entire another DOA hearing and through a first DCA hearing just to get there. We had the hearing. Of the two issues that we had, we settled on the second one, and Nestle Blue Triton agreed to come on to the consumptive use permit, which they had refused to do for 4 years. Them coming on the permit means that the rules of the district can be enforced at the bottling plant. It's not really clear why they were so reluctant to come on the permit, whether it was financial or whether they were really trying to skirt regulation. But either way, it is not the main victory, but a significant victory that we were able to force them on the permit. The second issue was obviously whether or not this permit's in the public interest, and because of the harm it's going to do to the Santa Fe River. That is something that we are still litigating. We're currently working on our proposed recommended orders. I think this case is part of a larger plan for Florida Springs Council to go after the consumptive use permitting system that is clearly broken. We know that about 99% of consumptive use permits are approved right now by the districts, at the same time as spring flow across the state is down 25 to 30%. So we're going to be looking at a variety of legal maneuvers and challenges, besides just challenging individual permits like this one, to try to restore some sanity to the water use permitting system in Florida. And one of the things that we found out that was kind of interesting from this whole campaign that's led us to this "Ooh, you drink bottled spring water" campaign that we're pushing out around the state. Within the environmental community, I think the rallying cry was "No more bottled water." And we've had a really, really hard time convincing people to just not drink bottled water at all. But what we found out from this case is that there's a really big difference between bottled spring water and bottled tap water. And because the spring water has to be taken from such a close proximity to the spring in order to have that spring water label on it, it has approximately 900 times the impact on the water resource than if the water was drawn from a city municipal well somewhere outside of the spring system. So that means that 1 million gallons pumped directly, well, not directly from, but right next to Jenny Springs. There was a pipe in Jenny Springs. It's now a few hundred feet to the side, has a greater impact on spring flow than the 500 million gallons pumped for public supply and agriculture within the basin. So we're really trying to focus people on just saying, look, everyone's probably going to have some bottled water in their garage during hurricane season, but make sure that's not spring water. The other thing about bottled tap water, we're pushing really hard for a water use fee. That's been a big priority for FSC. I know in the past it's been a big priority for Sierra Club. I think one of the places we've gotten the most traction is possibly a water use fee for water bottlers, because they're able to make such a premium on the water that they get essentially for only $115 application fee. Companies that take it from the public supply, they're paying for the water. So at least they have some reason to prioritize conservation and not be wasteful, which doesn't exist in situations where you're not paying for the water, where it's just being provided for the cost of the electricity and the permit. We just finished up the 2023 legislative session. You probably are all aware of this, but if not, I'd really like to ask you to help us out. Obviously, urban fertilizer ordinances are a huge priority for Sierra Club. And one of the most dirty, low down, duplicitous acts I've seen from the rat nest legislature in my 10 years, they managed to throw in a preemption on urban fertilizer ordinance that include a blackout period using the Budget Implementation Act, which is absolutely not how you're supposed to make policy. And if we had a government that had any checks and balances left, stuff like this wouldn't happen. But because we're Florida, it does. Fortunately, some of the brilliant folks at Sierra Club and some of your attorneys were able to figure out a way for us to kill this. Which is by asking the governor to veto the language in the budget using his line item veto power that authorizes an IFAS study. Of all the things that you could try to, there's a lot of bad stuff that happened this legislative session. I think, not only is this probably the most onerous, but it is also the one that we have the best opportunity to actually get a veto due to some powerful allies that have lined up in our favor. So FSC pays for a very fancy advocacy system, kind of well above our station, but we really like it and it serves us very well. We're a pretty new small group and we hit our 10,000th email sent last week to a decision maker in the past 18 months. So 10,000 emails is pretty cool, and we've seen quite a large number of effects. So you can either go to floridaspringscouncil.org and click on that advocacy alert button, or if you're savvy, you can actually scan that QR code that's on the screen right there. It'll take you directly to the advocacy alert. FSC is a little different than most nonprofits because we don't charge any membership fee to be a part of FSC. Our goal is really to get people helping us out with advocacy actions, informed, educated. We don't want to put any financial barrier between the public and our work. So you can go, you can do that. You can sign up to get other email alerts like this. Obviously, Sierra's covering this, but during the heat of legislative session, if you're really interested in springs and water issues, I think we're able to really focus on those and get more alerts out just because we have a narrower focus. So, there's still time on this. I really believe we can get this vetoed. Do it yourself. Make your kids do it. Make your grandkids do it. Make your friends do it. Make your Facebook friends do it. Make anyone you can do it. Because I think we have a real chance to kill this. And, Sierra Club does amazing work getting these ordinances passed. We just got one passed in Hernando County. That was absolutely fantastic. So we need to make sure that we can keep doing that great work around Florida. Where am I for time? Okay. And then maybe the thing I'm proudest of. This is a campaign we worked on for more than 3 years. The largest private developer in Florida wanted to develop a large chunk of the Rainbow River, about 130 acres, and make it into an RV park, hotel, resort, amphitheater, restaurant, what have you. Terrible idea for the river, terrible for the recreational impacts, terrible for the additional water use, terrible for the additional nitrogen. We ran a very, very aggressive local campaign targeting the developer specifically by name. We put out hundreds and hundreds of yard signs in the community. We sent a mailer to every single home in Dunellen. We went door to door to almost every home in Dunellen. We had all kinds of public meetings, protests, full-page ads in the newspaper, and eventually we convinced the developer to withdraw his proposal. That was back in 2020. And for the past 3 years, Conservation Florida has been working with Mr. Gissy, who is the developer, to see that land conserved. And we were very excited to find out last week that both of his properties along the Rainbow River has been placed in permanent conservation. So, it's really cool to have a chunk of land and know that land's going to remain pure along the Rainbow River. And I know y'all are in Tampa, but if anybody hasn't been out kayaking on the Rainbow River, you've got to go. There's, one of the most beautiful, beautiful springs in Florida, despite the nitrogen pollution. I have a great time every time I go. And this is just, I think a look at how it's possible to run a very aggressive campaign, which I think both FSC and Sierra Club are known for, and then to pivot and to actually work with the landowners and developers to get what's really a win-win solution for us, for the developer, and for the local community. So we're really proud of that, and the Florida Forever money that was used to complete that deal. And finally, down by y'all, Weeki Wachee Springs Protection Zone. Y'all are probably pretty familiar with this. This will be the first Springs Protection Zone on a major spring run in Florida. Initially, the Water Management District, Hernando County, and pretty much everyone else agreed that the spring run should go all the way from the state park to Rogers Boat Ramp. There was some opposition to that, and there was some pushback where they wanted to only put the Springs Protection Zone on 20 designated spots where harm had already occurred. Fortunately, we worked, FSC and Sierra Club and Native Plant Society worked with FWC 2 years ago to actually draft the rule. And one of the things that we got when we were working on drafting the rule was to make sure that it was a protective ordinance, not just a restorative ordinance. And that means that you don't have to show that there was damage to every single spot. And thanks to a lot of good work by the county, the district, Sierra Club, Native Plant Society, and a lot of their folks, we found out that FWC is going to come back with a proposed rule that covers the entire span of the river up to the Rogers Park boat ramp as originally requested. And they'll put that forward at their I think the meeting is going to be in Jacksonville in mid to late July. But that's a really good thing. It's great to see the first major Springs Protection Zone be an actually protective ordinance. And I think, we're still, it's such a new rule that we're still kind of figuring out what the four corners of that rule are. And I think there's going to be a lot of discussions to come about whether you can regulate types of vessels, engine size, things like that. Because I know up in the Santa Fe, Chautauqua, and other areas, they're looking at doing Springs Protection Zones there, but they have slightly different issues. So from our perspective, this was a really good win and really impressive for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission to kind of push back against the folks who are going to be regulated and propose a much stronger ordinance. And I think in general, we've been having very good cooperation from FWC recently compared to what we have from some of our other state agencies. Let's see here. All right, so I'll get to questions, but before I do, if you all want to see me and the other FSC people in person and talk some more and potentially have a beer with us, we are going to be in St. Pete and in St. Harbor, not this coming weekend, but next weekend. We'll be in Friday in St. Pete at Three Daughters Brewing for their Friday block party and night market. And then we have our own event at Crooked Thumb on Saturday from 12 to 8. We have a whole bunch of really cool swag, including some awesome pint glasses and shirts that you can only buy live at our events. So if anybody from this comes out, find me. I'll happily buy you a beer and we can talk some springs together. And I will go to questions if we have them.
Okay, before we go to our questions, I'd like to make one last announcement. If everybody has not registered in the chat, please put your name and your email address in the chat so we have a record of your attendance. Thanks. So go on to questions. Bonnie will moderate that. Okay, she's working on getting off mute.
I can read some off of the chat if folks want me to.
Okay, I'll read them off there until. Okay, let's see where we get. Ron asked, do you feel, I guess this is Ron that I know from Tallahassee, do you feel as I do that it's unless there's a wholesale change in Tallahassee, the chance of our water quality improving is slim and none? Remember Governor Rick Scott, who killed off the septic tank inspection replacement program? DeSantis could not care less. my 2 cents. Thank you, Ron, for the group's work. So, yeah, and that's, without the votes, are we going to get anything done in the legislature?
Um, so to the first, yeah, I mean, I think that wholesale change might be hard. Honestly, you just need a governor. If you, my interpretation of Florida's environmental system is that we actually have very good laws if they were enforced. And of course, enforcement comes down to agencies, and the agencies are only going to do what the governor allows them to do.
Okay. So Gary Gibbons
The
asked,
courts are our recourse, you know?
yeah. So Gary Gibbons asked, are you concerned that the legislators will repeal the law that the DP has lost?
So they can't repeal the law because that would just be such an embarrassment politically that they can't do that. What they did this year, they're anything but dumb. So the BMAPs have 5, 10, 15, and 20-year goals for achieving nutrient reductions. And those goals were the same for every BMAP, for all the outstanding Florida Springs BMAPs, 30% by year 5, 70% by year 10, 100% by year 15. Those are not in statute anywhere. They're just decided by DEP. So we pushed for the BMAPs to be required to have all the credits necessary to achieve the entire reduction when they're adopted. The legislature changed the law this year to say that the BMAPs only had to have enough projects to achieve the 5-year milestones. We asked the legislature, we said, well, if that's what you're going to do, the 5-year milestones need to be set in law. And DEP refused to do that. I mean, just kind of the ridiculousness of Tallahassee. I spent 4 years in court beating DEP on the BMAPs. And then all of our amendments in the legislature have to be run by the same people that we just beat in court. And, shockingly, they were not happy with our amendments to uphold the court ruling. So we didn't lose anything. I mean, that's the problem, is that the way DEP was interpreting the BMAPs, we got nothing. Having to have them at least meet the 5-year deadline is something, but it's certainly not what was intended in 2016 when the Senate wrote and passed this bill. It's a long answer. But yeah, I'm always concerned. I mean, if you look at preemption, if you look at everything, it's always a concern that the legislature will just go in and take out whatever you want.
Okay, thanks. Janet Stamko from the Tampa Bay Sierra Club Executive Committee asked, are the nutrient levels driven by the ability of farmers to apply biosolids to their fields as fertilizer?
Well, the nutrient levels are driven by the ability of farmers to apply any nitrogen-containing supplement to their field. So it really doesn't matter what you're putting down. The problem is we have an unconfined aquifer, and when the rain hits it, it's going to go into the aquifer. And if it goes into the aquifer, despite what DEP says, it's only going to come out of spring. There's actually no magical place for nitrogen to go once it's in the aquifer. So biosolids are a problem. I think they're a bigger problem in the some of the St. John's Basin than maybe in other areas around our outstanding Florida Springs. But it is a big issue, and there was a bill that was passed this year. It's a pretty milquetoast bill. I don't think it's going to do much. I actually saw it got sent to the governor for his signature today. But just one last comment on that. Both the biosolids and the dairies, I think one thing we hear as Springs advocates a lot is like, well, what do you want us to do? We can't make the farmers move. We have to put the biosolids somewhere. Well, all those things were kicked out of South Florida. All the dairies that are, destroying the Sewanee and Santa Fe were in the Kissimmee, and they were paid to go up to the Sewanee for Everglades restoration. All the biosolids that are being dumped in the Santa Fe and our springs are because they banned putting those down in the Everglades. So, the money flows south and the poop flows north in Florida.
Very good. So a while back, someone from the Tampa Bay Sierra Club, a member, saw a large septic tank company dumping every day, like right next to the upper Little Manatee River, without permits or doing any treating it at all, and it was right next to the river. And she reported it, and we got it stopped. And it was just a member saw it. So,
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I got some opinion on this, but I'm not going to say anything about this. And there's some people on this call from the Florida chapter, and they may want to chime in. Do you believe the right to clean water petitioning will actually do anything if passed? It's like shortcutting too much of the result, and if it did actually help save the environment at the cost of big polluters, it seems like it'd be repealed immediately, much as I hate to admit it. And that's from Paul.
I think, I think it takes lots of different efforts and people focusing on different things for us to be successful. And I don't really want to, we support the amendment. I think when you look at constitutional amendments, like Amendment 1, like a lot of amendments, even when they're written very narrowly and very accurately, they're still going to be interpreted by the legislature. They're still going to be interpreted by the courts. And we've had success in court, right? So, we have not had an issue so far being victorious in court. So it's not really where we're putting our focus, but I really hope that they do succeed. I mean, we need anything we can do. We're definitely losing the battle. And, I can't predict what's going to be the thing that puts us over the top. So if anyone hasn't signed it, I would definitely sign it. More of me being reticent of that specific amendment, I think I'm a little bit reticent of any constitutional amendment being able to fix this.
Well, I will tell you, many states have passed the right to clean water, right to wildlife, and even in the Northeast and in the West, they have not fared well in court, unfortunately. Okay, so this is a good question. This next one: are the presence of garfish indicative of spring health? I've only seen some in the Wiki Watchy, and I've snorkeled Royal Manatee Springs. Because I've seen gars in some pretty nasty water. So, what about that? That's a very good question.
I don't know, but I used to catch them in the canals behind my house in Broward County. That water wasn't good at all. So I'm gonna guess not. But I'm not. I have no biological knowledge. I'm just a policy wonk.
I mean, I've seen them in the Ohio River sloughs where every fish was dead in the slough except for the gar.
They are very cool though. If you ever get to Paddle Itch, there's Gar Hotel, which is a really cool spot where they all just congregate.
Yeah, I used to catch them when I was a kid, barehanded in floodwaters. Yikes. Okay, and this is a good one. Rob Jordan, he's our communication chair, and he's also on our executive committee. Can you quantify the difference between motorized vessels and non-motorized vessels as regard to damage to a spring or river?
Can I quantify it? No, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to quantify it. If you are in a kayak, you're gonna have a real hard time messing up a spring run. When your feet are on the bottom or the motor's on the bottom or you're dropping an anchor or you're basically, if you're touching something, you're probably going to mess it up. So I think a lot of these springs protection zones are just trying to get rid of that, that damaging behavior. If any of y'all, I know it's a ways from you, but if any of y'all haven't been back up to Itchituckney since they closed down the northern part to tubers, you can really, it's a different question, but you can really see the impact people have. After COVID, they shut down the northern part of Itch to tubers. You can only take kayaks down there. No one's allowed in the water. And it has come back and is more beautiful than I've ever seen in my life. The otters are back. The alligators are back. It is outrageous. So, I think it varies based on the system, what we need to do. But the impact on the biological diversity in the ecosystem is certainly real.
Yeah, that's a good point because the Chattahoochee River, which starts up in North Georgia, they used to have major tubing events and major canoeing events. They've closed all that off through the middle of Atlanta and is now got cleaner, more wildlife, more otters, more beavers and everything. And it wasn't motorized boats. It was kayaks, canoes, and tubes, thousands and thousands, and they've closed that off.
Right. And it's really the tubes, so it really, it just depends. I mean, if you go up in the Itchitucky, the private part where they allow motorboats, it's so narrow up through there that you get one boat blasting through and you're just, the big problem for them is the jet skis actually, which, don't have the outboard motors, but the propulsion just blows out all of the submerged aquatic vegetation. It just blows it right out of the sand. And they end up with most of their vegetation floating down the spring from the jet skis. There's other places where jet skis wouldn't be a problem at all. So I really think it depends on the system.
Okay. So I think we've reached the end of the questions. Anybody got any questions? Hold your hand up, jump up and down, whatever. I want to thank, there's some folks from chapter on here. I really appreciate that. I saw a friend of mine that I got to spend with West Virginia. Steve, are you still on here? We got to go to some training for Sierra Club in West Virginia along the Potomac River with the spring. It was kind of cool. So does anybody else have any additional questions? Someone asked me the other day, what's the 3 most important things that the Sierra Club thinks is important with the environment? And my answer was water, sprawl, and transportation. Not necessarily in that order because they're so intertwined, but water is so huge with so many people coming in and such a demand. So Ryan, we really appreciate this, and we all got to jump together and get this done. But we got to start with the local elections, and we got to get people elected. That's the bottom line. We can scream and holler all we want about Tallahassee, but till we get people in those seats pulling that lever up there in Tallahassee, we can scream and holler all we want. Sorry.
I see Paul has one more question. Do you know if there's still a point source pollution pipe near the Alafia River? I read in a book there's one near there affecting Gulf sturgeon spawning.
I don't. I know springs, very little else.
Has there ever been Gulf sturgeon in like the Hillsborough River, the Anclote River, and the Alafia River, and the Bradenton River? Anybody know? Gary, you've lived here a while.
I've never heard of them anywhere except the Swanee.
The actual question was for the Alapaha, which is a tributary to the Swanee.
Alapaha. Okay.
Yep.
I thought it was a misspelling of Alafia.
It's different river. Very interesting one.
So Shirley, what about how far south does the sturgeon go?
I don't think it goes much, if any, further south than the Swanee.
So I'm curious, does it go up in the Mobile and the Tombigbee up in the Apalachicola River and those rivers, or just the Swanee, huh?
I think it is in some of those a few of those panhandle rivers, including, I think, the Apalachicola.
Wow.
You don't have many major rivers going out to the ocean between the Swanee and the southern Withlacoochee.
Yeah, you don't. They're not in the Withlacoochee either, probably, are they?
Well, if they can get into the Alapaha, they can certainly get into the northern Withlacoochee. I'm not so sure. The Alapaha is frequently dry, but there may be there's definitely a cave. They may be able to go the underground route.
Yeah.
I've seen them in the Withlacoochee, the upper Withlacoochee.
Oh, you have. So I think they're interesting. It's when you see one for the first time, it's like it's a dinosaur. It's kind of it's like the gar to me, or the snapping turtle. They all look so ancient and so, then you throw the alligator snapper in there, it's even more vicious, and I don't know if vicious is the right word, but they're more. So anybody else got any questions? Tina, here we go. Seven Rivers, Swanee, Pearl, Pascagoula, Choctawhatchee, and Apalachicola. Well, that's like, reminds me of Winey's deal. Okay. Okay, yeah, the Alafi, that's very familiar to the Alafi. And just in case anybody wants to know, the Alafia is really pronounced Alafi. So, an Indian told me that. Okay. Anybody else got any questions? Now, we don't sign off when we're done. We say, okay, we're done. It's like when we have a meeting, everybody doesn't mysteriously vanish out of the meeting room. So people hang out, ask questions. We can talk about anything. So y'all are welcome to hang on. Bonnie, you want me to tell about next month?
Well, yeah, next month is the joint meeting with Native Plant Society and Audubon. And last July, we Sierra Club sponsored it. This July, Native Plant Society is sponsoring it. It will be at the Tampa Garden Club, the same place we had it last year. And there will be a flyer coming out. It'll be I'm not sure if it's the second Wednesday. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but there will be a flyer coming out. Oh, here it is. It'll be July the 12th, 6 to 8:30 at the Tampa Garden Club. And we will have a flyer coming out about it to tell you more about it.
Oh,
No.
we do have. Oh, okay. I got one more question. Boy, I'm glad somebody think of that. And I can't pronounce it. Akluwaha Dam. They were talking about taking that dam out. What's the status of that dam?
Right, so the Akalawaha is essentially dammed to Silver River from reaching the St. Johns River. Been there for 50 years, has no purpose, built as part of the Cross-Florida Barge Canal. We need about $30 million to breach the dam, put in some new recreation, and restore the river flow. I won't bore with the details, but it's clearly the most cost-effective and important environmental project in Florida. We spend $50 million on a single wastewater treatment plant that basically has no real impact to our water quality. This $30 million would provide habitat for 15% of the Indian River Lagoon manatees. And of course, that's so important right now. So we're working hard on that. It's been many years in the making, and I think that the folks who are running that effort are really optimistic that will have success in 2024. They've started a new 501c4 and are working with some top-notch consultants and lobbyists, and hopefully they can get there. They've done a lot of great work, and they're being blocked by just a small group of people. Hopefully we can get that over the edge.
Cool. Well, Ryan, we really appreciate all this great information you've given us, and so all we can encourage everybody is let's get out there and let's support this group. He put his link in the website, and we've made a recording of this, and we'll put it on our website, and we'll have we'll put Ryan's contact information. So I encourage folks to join his organization because they do lots of good. It's our biggest resource, We got to take care of it. So I guess we could say the meeting is over, but if you guys want to stick around, we can ask questions, talk about the Rays, how good they're doing, and I want to thank everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed this. And
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
the work
much.
you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah, thank
Rod.
you all so much. And seriously, we'll be 23rd and 24th, Safety Harbor on the 23rd, Crooked Thumb on the 24th. I'm serious. Come out, tell me about the presentation. I'll be happy to buy you a beer. See so many members on here. I mean, I wouldn't be in this position without Sierra Club. FSC relies on Sierra Club. So anything I can ever do for you all, we're just so lucky to have a group like Sierra. Having our back as kind of a small, nimble nonprofit. It's just, I love it with you guys.
we'll be there. The beer locked it
Very
in.
much.
You had us at beer.
Yeah, awesome. I hope to see you all. And everyone have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Ryan.
you.
Try to get there
Thanks,
on the
Ryan.
23rd.
So, Steve, you got to see Agar, huh?
Yeah, there was a large number of them in a little cove off the side of the rainbow. I think it was the area where there used to be a sunken boat, but that's been removed.
So I grew up in southern Indiana on the Ohio River, and we used to walk on the dams as a kids, and it was about 3 foot wide with water boiling right underneath us. And we weren't
Oh,
supposed to, but we'd get in trouble all the time. But we'd walk out because it was really good fishing. And it was full of perch. We'd catch a potato sack full of perch, about 2 pounds. But every once in a while, we'd hook a big old alligator gar, not a gar, an alligator gar, which has got a longer, thinner bill, and they're pretty archaic looking too.
mhm.
And they were really, we'd get them and we'd get off the dam and put them up on the ground and look at them. They're really an unusual. But when the gars came in, the fishing ended. No fish. I got to shout out to Becky Bunkley. Glad to see you on here, Becky. Becky used to be on our XCOM a couple of weeks ago, right, Betty? She's still muted, but she used to, and seen her or heard for a while. So, Steve, that's pretty cool. I haven't seen a gar in a long time, or I haven't seen an alligator snapper. I've seen a snapper, but I don't know if alligator snappers come this far south or not. But
Rocky Paul's got his hand up.
hey, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, just curious if anybody knows. I'm in there many times. Also, apparently, I visited, and I guess the world record long nose gar was caught there, or at least this, know if that's like a hotspot for them, or is it just random chance?
Say the world record was caught down here.
Or at least the state record is like 40 something gar.
You know,
And that's pretty shit.
I've seen alligator gars 6 foot long
Wow.
on the Ohio River, but their alligator gar is different than the gar that's in Florida. Uh, you'll see alligator gars, and you catch those. You snag a lot of them. You'll be fishing and you'll snag one. You won't really hook him, and they don't fight, but you drag them in. But I've caught some 15 pounders before. So, and they don't. And what I started to tell you, the water where we caught them, it was nasty water. I mean, we'd see dead fish floating because the water was so bad, but the gars were thriving. So
Yeah, I think that might actually have to do with the oxygen. I think oxygen water than both than most fish.
yeah,
Um,
I think they're pretty hardy. We hit them. We'd be fishing. We'd see 20 or 30 of them at one time churning the water. Um, of course, as kids, we loved catching them and taking them out on land and playing with them and then throwing them back in. As a 12-year-old kid, we thought it was pretty cool. It's like catching a dinosaur fish. So,
Well, good night, everybody. I got to run. Sorry.
okay. Okay. So,
I said the record longnose was caught in a river. No, it was actually caught in Lake.
really?
Record fish or caught in a river or something like that.
Wow, I wonder what the record. So I'd like to look that up on Google and see what the record is for an alligator for a gar. I keep saying alligator gar because
And the Apalachicola River. Some record fish
we
over
didn't
there.
have gars. We had alligator gars, which is a little different. Yeah, I've never seen one here in Florida. Yes, I have on some rivers, but I've seen them up north where you couldn't even see a half inch in the water. It was so bad. Yeah, this was good. I enjoyed this. This was
Yeah.
yeah.
To Vaughn to speak, or did you reach out to him?
Yes. We got his email on this chat.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. If not, Bonnie's got it. We'll put it on the website. When we put the link out there, it takes us a couple of days, but we'll have that link out there. I don't see his contact information, but we have it, so we'll get that posted. We have a link on our website of all of our programs. So the next thing we're going to add on there, we're going to start adding our outings. Do those. No, I don't see it. I'm going through the chat. I don't see his thing on there. We'll get that for you. That will automatically go on there. So where do you guys all live?
I live like 3 or 4 minutes from the last
Oh,
meeting.
oh, cool.
Or I didn't walk the whole boardwalk, but I probably saw like a 3 or 4 footer.
Yeah, good. Good to see you. Isabel, what part of the country you live in? She may not be there. Carla, you live in the Tampa Bay area or you live somewhere else?
I live in Clearwater.
Okay, well, good. Glad you joined us. Suncoast folks, glad to see you. And I have a lot of good friends that are Suncoast.
Hmm.
I do most of their outings training for them. So, we haven't done it, and I need to talk to them. We used to do a joint picnic with Suncoast, and we used to do it at Philippi Park. So we need to get that kicked off again. It's a good place. Any of you guys bird watchers?
Jesus on the floor. You didn't need him.
Anybody on here bird watchers?
I mean, I'll see. Look at now.
Well, there's some boobies nesting or in Safety Harbor out there on their power lines. They've been out there. They roost there. Been roosting there for over a year, which is kind of cool. Isabel, how you doing? So, what part of the county area you live in?
Are you there, Rocky?
Yes, I can hear you.
I
fine.
just unmuted. I'm sorry. I've been listening to you all comment. I enjoyed the program. I was on mute the whole time.
Sure.
I didn't want my cats making noise during the meeting.
I know. Well, I got my door shut so my cat won't get in. My cat will walk on top of the keyboard and everything else. So
I live in Tampa. When are you guys opening up the programs at the library?
August.
Oh,
August.
okay.
We're doing it in August. It won't be the same library. The county changed their procedures on not openings. We can they used to let us lock up the library ourselves, but they quit that policy now. So we can only have it at libraries that stay open at night.
Oh.
But there's a library like Hillsborough, and there's one fairly in that same Seminole Heights area.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I can't remember where it is at this moment, but we've got the library already reserved. We'll do that starting in August.
Oh, great. Okay.
And
I know Jimmy B.
I'm sorry.
Jimmy B. Keel opens in the evenings, but that's not as central as the Seminole Heights area. So
Yeah, we wanted to stay at the same library.
yeah.
For all these years, but they don't stay open at night. So
Yeah, it's a small library. Okay, well, I hope to resume going again then in August. I'll keep track of what's going on and hopefully I'll ask for the night off so I can be there.
yeah, and we're gonna do what we call a hybrid meeting, but we want to get people back together, talk about having some snacks and some stuff, and try to have more get to know each other. We're looking forward to it. It's been a long time.
I'm gonna sign. I've got to go now. I'm gonna sign off, and I wanted to say thank you again to our speaker. I already signed up with the Springs Council.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I got to get off to myself. I got to get something to eat again.
Have a wonderful night, all.
Okay, Paul, good to hear from you again, and Carla. I'm gonna sign off now. So glad everybody attended, and hope you enjoyed.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to
Thanks.
you guys later. Have a
Bye-bye.
good evening.
Bye.
Bye.